Good evening and welcome to the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers All Candidates Virtual Town Hall, facilitated by the Chair of the OSPE Nominations Committee, Megan Janes. Before we begin, I would like to take this opportunity to cover a few housekeeping items. All attendees will remain muted for the duration of the session. To change your personal view of the webinar, click the View icon and select your preferred setting. There are three ways to ask the candidates a question. First was by submitting your question along with your registration prior to the session. If a question was submitted several different ways, but with the same intent, it will be asked once this evening. Please also direct all questions regarding Professional Engineers Ontario directly to PEO at peo.on.ca. If you have a question about a specific advocacy item, please try and direct those questions to our advocacy staff team at OSPE, who work directly with our volunteer task forces. Their contact information can be found at our website at ospe.on.ca. During the town hall, if time permits, there will be two options to ask a question live. First is through our Q&A function. Please submit your question via text in the Q&A box. They will be sent to staff monitoring tonight's event and will be read aloud. We will try to get to as many questions as possible. If you would prefer to ask your question verbally using your own microphone, please select the raise hand button in the reactions section of the toolbar. Staff will introduce you and unmute your microphone. Individuals will only be allowed to ask one question at a time. Without further delay, it is now my pleasure to introduce the chair of the OSPE Nominations Committee, Megan Janes.
Good evening, everyone, and again, welcome to OSPE's All Candidates Town Hall. This is an opportunity for you, our members, to hear what your candidates' visions are for your association. I'm coming to you virtually from my home in Toronto, and I would like to acknowledge that we are gathering here today on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Indigenous people in Canada have persevered through colonialism, genocide, through the erasure of their languages and identities, through their communities being torn apart, and continued systematic discrimination and marginalization. It is up to all of us to do the work necessary to understand our collective history and strive to create the inclusive society where we embrace curiosity and different perspectives. OSPE's elections are structured to ensure a turnover of 1/3 of our board members each year, and therefore there are 4 open positions for a 3-year term. We are pleased to welcome the following candidates running for election. We have Arjan Arenja, maybe just wave there. Nicholas Burgwin, Nick Colucci, Peter Marcucci, Marilyn Powers, and Beatrice C. Welcome, candidates, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to give back to your profession. Each of the candidates will be permitted up to 2 minutes for their opening remarks, and then I'll direct questions to the candidates, and each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond to the questions. Following the question periods, we'll give each candidate up to a minute for closing remarks. And the order of speakers this evening will begin alphabetically by last name, and we'll wrap up in closing remarks in alphabetical order as well. For the question responses, each candidate will be given the opportunity to go first with each question asked, and then we used a random list generator to come up with the order of candidates. Please note that the views and opinions of the candidates do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of OSPE. So let us now begin with opening remarks. Each candidate again will have 2 minutes, and please all keep to the time limits to be fair to all the candidates. We want to ensure everyone has the opportunity to answer the questions as well as being able to get to as many questions from the audience as possible. So the first candidate this evening is Arjan Aranja. Arjan.
Thank you very much, Megan. First of all, I'd like to thank you and the nomination committee for your hard work on putting this slate of candidates forward. All very incredible individuals, and I'm wishing them all good luck. Now, the membership, thank you for affording me the opportunity to tell you about myself and share why I want to continue serving my profession. I'm deeply committed to advancing the engineering profession in Ontario and firmly advocate for the distinct roles of regulatory responsibility for PEO and the advocacy role for OSPI. I'm passionate about good governance in engineering. I've been serving the PEO Council since December of 2019. I've been able to contribute to the governance transformation of the PEO board as the chair of the Governance and Nomination Committee. Any of you who might have attended the council meetings over the past 5 years will have noticed my passion for good governance and my desire to get PEO Council to focus on its role of regulating the profession of engineering in the public interest. My values very much align with OSPI's values. I firmly believe that engineers have a responsibility to lead and make positive impact on society through our analytical skills and collaborative problem-solving approach. Equity, diversity, and inclusions are fundamental to achieving meaningful progress. I've actively supported initiatives such as 30 by 30 to promote diversity within the engineering profession. I look forward to attending this year's Engineers Canada Conference on 30 by 30 in Winnipeg on May 22nd. Serving OSPI will allow me to leverage my experience with PEO, Engineers Canada, and additionally, I will be able to leverage my board experience with Electrical Safety Authority and Pallet Skills and National Board, and my formal board training to be an effective member of the OSPI board. I believe OSPI has a huge opportunity to be successful and preeminent engineering advocacy organization in Canada. I look forward to being able to contribute to this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and perfect timing. Next up, we have Nicholas Bergwin. Nick.
Thank you, Megan. Hello, everybody. My name is Nicholas Bergwin. I'll jump right in and just say a strong regulator, in this case PEO, should have a strong advocacy body. That's OSPI, Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, to represent really the needs and the perspectives of Ontario engineers. I've had the opportunity to serve on the OSPI board, and I'm now running for a second opportunity for a second term. I believe that a board should be collaborative and diverse, and my background in industry experience allows me to bring forth unique insights on the needs and motivations for OSPI members and non-members. I have a growth mindset, having been in the background, having been in startups previously before, and I'm very passionate about data. Problem solving and decisions should be data-driven and made with supporting evidence, and solutions should be continuously evaluated to measure progress. I'll bring this experience to the OSPI board if given the opportunity to do so. During my time on the OSPI board, this was between 2020 and 2023, I focused on sustaining the organization's financial stability during COVID and driving membership growth. I was a member of the Audit and Finance Committee and the treasurer for my last 2 years on the board. We had also spent at a board level quite a bit of work focusing on the correlation of memberships and how that impacted the financial position of the foundation of the actual organization to better understand what the changes in membership really meant to the organization. I think it's still very important to focus on membership, to focus on the value proposition that the organization provides in order to be a strong advocacy body, because we are the stronger voice if we have a larger membership base. So thank you for the opportunity to run for the board.
Thank you. Next up, we have Nick Colucci, please.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here tonight as a candidate for the OSPI Board of Directors, and I'm thankful to the nominating committee and to the staff who made this evening possible. As an OSPI member since the creation in 2000, I have always been passionate about the Ontario professional engineers having their own voice to advocate for engineers in Ontario. And as president and chair of PEO Council 2 terms ago, I fully understand the regulatory requirements of PEO as well as the advocacy needs of the 90,000 PEngs in Ontario. Engineers in Ontario face a number of challenges that OSPI needs to address, both at the provincial government level and in society as a whole. OSPI has great opportunities to demonstrate to the government the need for a chief engineer that could be consulted on engineering matters, the need that every municipality to have a PE on staff or appoint as Director of Public Works, and that engineers should be consulted in all important policy changes like climate change, asset management, infrastructure funding, and immigration. OSPI also has the opportunity to demonstrate to the public the important work that engineers do and when an engineer should be retained. Fair wages for engineers and engineering consultants in line with that of other professions. And OSPI also has the opportunity to demonstrate to all Ontario engineers that joining OSPI will increase the advocacy and collaboration voice with government, industry, and the public. The financial benefit of joining OSPI, including member rates for insurance, professional development, legal consultations, employment assistance, health and dental, and other. And a better value proposition to increase the current membership levels to guarantee the stability of the organization. Because to be sustainable, OSPI should increase its membership to more of a percentage of the 90,000 PNGs. I thank you for attending today's All Candidates meeting and ask that you vote for me so that I may continue to advocate for the profession and serve as a dedicated board member, committed to continuing the great work of OSPI and strengthening the voice of Ontario engineers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Peter Marcucci.
Thank you, Megan, and welcome everybody. And it's a pleasure to be here and have an opportunity to speak to you. I've been an OSPI member since its inception, and in 2012, I retired from the Electrical Safety Authority as the Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and Chief Public Safety Officer. I knew in retirement that I wanted to pursue board work, so I completed the Directors College program at McMaster University. I wanted to make sure that my corporate governance experience and I had the corporate governance knowledge and experience to serve as an effective board member. I currently serve on the OSPI board and the board of the Technical Standards and Safety Authority. I also served on the OSPI board between 2015 and 2018. Effective board members require a matrix of skills. My skill set includes corporate governance, strategy development, risk management, government relations, regulatory management, stakeholder engagement, and human resources management. I spent the largest part of my career in roles that required developing collaboration and consensus among diverse stakeholder interest groups. I've served on OSPI's Human Resources Committee and the Board Development and Strategic Planning Committee. As engineers, we know that working together is the building block of our success, and OSPI is an effective advocate for our profession and represents our efforts as Ontario's engineers to have a collective, thoughtful, and influential voice with the public, government, business, and regulators. As an OSPI board member, I understand OSPI's challenges and opportunities. The profession is changing in Ontario and across Canada. Engineering regulators are being compelled to focus on their regulatory mandate and divest of non-regulatory activities. Continuing education is a new requirement. OSPI is well served to represent the interests of engineers and provide the services we need. The board's role is to ensure CEO effectiveness, oversee and monitor the affairs of the organization, and establish, in conjunction with the CEO, an effective strategy. Board members must understand their governance role. I know firsthand that high-performing boards set the tone at the top that can lead to CEO and organizational success. Conversely, I've seen many examples of how organizations have tarnished their reputations because of poor governance and ineffective and dysfunctional boards. And we don't have to look too far to
Peter,
see.
we're at time.
Okay, so thank you very much, and I look forward to your support.
Thank you. Marilyn Powers, you're next.
Good evening, everybody, and it's so nice to be here to be able to present myself against these or with these very prestigious and great candidates. So Engineering principles and skills are in high demand. We can't dispute that. We are the problem solvers and designers of the created world, and we need to unite and augment our voice to the public, to the policymakers, and to the decision makers that are in government. We need a seat at that table. And because of this strong belief, I want to help us get there by serving on the OSPI board again. My values of inclusiveness to make sure that we're all represented and keeping with diversity, collaborative because I believe that collective intelligence is what's going to get us there, and I like to remain human-centered. I have 25 years of building technology to help people learn, and this is serving me well in my engineering profession. But it's also all non-traditional profession. I have biomechanical engineering training. I was a biomedical engineer for a while. I've led software teams as well in building education, and I've led educational teams in using technology effectively in the college system. A couple of years ago, I served as your president. As you may know, I am seeking a second term election here. I have therefore participated in almost every committee on the board. And because of the great mentors on the board that I have served with, I have decided also to get more education, and I'm currently completing my director's education program at the Rotman School of Management. And this is bringing new insight into how our board functions as a foresight committee, how we function strategically, and it's already starting to have its effect. So I would like to have that chance to come back to the board and do more of that. Because I believe collectively we can elevate the reputation and respect of the engineering profession, inclusive of all those who completed an engineering degree, whether in Canada or internationally. Thanks.
Beatrice C., over to you.
Hi. I'm running because I believe the next 5 years will be critical for the province and this entire profession. Artificial intelligence, political enthusiasm for infrastructure spending due to climate change, our continued work of self-regulation, and sensitivity around equity, diversity, and inclusion issues are just some of the challenges and opportunities facing this profession and this board. For the last 4 years, I've had the opportunity to serve this community as the chair of the Research and Innovation Task Force. It has been an absolute privilege to work closely with many of you as members and with Sandro and his team, as they have done an incredible job operationally to execute on this board's vision to turn this organization into the voice that it is today, the voice of the engineering profession. So to Peter's point, I do believe that the tone this board sets for engineers and the public and how it chooses to set that tone will have an impact for decades to come. But let's talk about my competence. For those that don't know me, I'm a Canadian engineer from the nuclear industry. I was a designer at GE Hitachi, then a client-facing field engineer for BWXT with signing authority on pressure boundary work for CANDU reactors, where I represented my team to the CNSC. Little known fact, maybe a bit of a surprise to this community, I also happen to be a lawyer. I've practiced law in Ontario for almost 10 years, where I have served both engineering and technology companies in both an advisory board member capacity and a full board member capacity. I have navigated with for-profit organizations through mergers and acquisitions, intellectual property concerns, sensitive HR matters, governance concerns, and litigation matters. I don't speak about these things because my fiduciary duty to those organizations as a lawyer means that all of that experience is privileged, and I do take that seriously. But I do have an understanding, though a diverse one, of how governance does work. So I bring both experience and diversity of experience to this board. Fundamentally, though, I share all of these candidates' shared values. I believe that engineers are one of the most important voices in our country today, and they are obligated to lead. I say that to my clients up and down and to many of you.
Beatrice, you're out of time.
Oh, I would like the opportunity to enable all engineers in their leadership. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you all. We will now move on to the question component. You'll each have 1 minute to respond to the question. And before I read the first question, as I told you, I had a randomized order of responses. I'll just give you a quick heads up then. For this first question, Nicholas Bergwin, the order is Nicholas Bergwin, Arjun Arenja, Peter, Marilyn, Beatrice, and Nick Colucci. First question. This year, OSPI will be embarking on the development of its next strategic plan. What do you think should be the new vision of this strategic plan? Nick Bergwin, 1 minute.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity. I think the focus on the strategic plan should be on focusing on what the value that the organization brings to the membership. So the reality is that the organization is supported financially, both by the members, but also by other kind of agreements that are in place from insurance companies to help establish and run the organization. In order to run the advocacy work that is done, we need a large membership base to do that, to have the bandwidth to actually go out and advocate on behalf of engineers in Ontario. So there is a bit of a disconnect between advocacy work and then bringing direct value to members. So that needs to be a focus within the strategic plan, is clearly defining what is the value that we bring to the members to encourage both the existing members to stay as members and then to encourage new members to join, to then increase the ability for the advocacy work that is done to have a stronger and more relevant voice in the Ontario landscape.
Thanks, Nick. Arjun, you are next.
Thank you, Megan. I couldn't agree with Nicholas anymore, but my thinking is here that we need to have a bold vision where Ontario engineers want to be part of OSPI, not because it will provide a slew of benefits to engineers, but because they want to be part of OSPI. And I love the tagline that OSPI uses, the voice of engineering profession in Ontario. But to represent the entire community of engineers, we need to attract more members. There are over 90,000 licensed engineers in Ontario. Add to this number engineering graduates and students, we are a community of well over 100,000 engineers in this province. Can you imagine if even half of the community was part of OSPI? I can. It'll be awesome. I think we can do it. So my thinking is, therefore, the vision has to be such more than a list of benefits. It has to be compelling in what engineers stand for, what is their role, their contribution, how they can help with emerging challenges of the 21st century, be it the climate crisis, aging infrastructure, aging population, opportunities and threats, or with adoption of new technology, including AI and AGI that Beatrice spoke of. I think we have huge opportunity. I think I can make a difference to this vision, if you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, you are next up.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my mute button there. I looked at this question and I've participated in strategic planning exercises over the full 40 years of my career. And what I found when I saw this question is most of these exercises spend the first 45 to 1 hour defining terms, understanding what vision, mission, and values actually mean, because we all have different understandings of them. In my context, vision is what describes our desired future state. It's aspirational and it's long-term, and it operates in conjunction with the mission, why we exist as an organization, and our values, our beliefs, our moral compass. So when I say, when I see something, well, do we need to change our vision? I really had to look back at our current strategic plan, and it says the world we're trying to create is one where we're diverse and inclusive, we're bold and courageous, we're respected leaders, we collaborate with stakeholders, we seize new opportunities, we solve Ontario's problems, and we make evidence-based decisions. So I would be wanting to step back. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Marilyn, you were next.
Great. So I can just say yes and to Peter's great introduction there. The current strategic plan has 4 big pillars: engineers lead, engineers grow, engineers care, and engineers prosper. I think OSPI is doing a fantastic job in those pillars, and especially in leading. We are now having great traction at Queen's Park. We have an academy that is attracting more and more members and people to do continuous professional development. We have diversity and inclusion that has now turned itself into some of our advocacy and procurement. This is fantastic. I think in the next 3-year term, we need to start looking at Engineers Prosper. How are we going to increase the reputation of engineers? How are we going to level up or raise up the respect of the public to the engineering profession that will result in better opportunities, more engineers getting hired, and pocketbook, right? More money in our pockets, because we're the innovators and we're the builders and we're the creators. And I don't think people know that enough. And so I think that's probably where we'll put some more strength based on the fact that we have a tremendous foundation and we need to keep it. So I don't,
Marilyn, you're up.
Good, thanks.
Great. Beatrice, you're next.
Okay. Agree with all that's been said above. Would add some specifics. Specifically, Dr. Powers raised a great point. I think the 4 pillars that the previous board set out are great, and I would not disturb them. For me, it's emerging technologies, though. To Nick's point, when we want to increase membership, and from my experience, this is operational, but working in advocacy really seems to increase non-members to join. If they see that we are an effective body that can actually speak credibly to their profession, to their reputations, we see great results like 625 million of additional funds for water infrastructure, which was a result of our advocacy day recently coming out of my task force. So I've seen that like engineers, when they find their voice and they feel that there's actually an organization that is established and mature and able to take their voice to those in power, it's really effective. I've seen a quadrupling of non-member to member engagement just from doing this. So I think that the focus on membership is key, and my key issue would be to go after the computer and engineering, electrical engineering graduates who are not yet members. Those emerging disciplines, though it's a controversial topic, is something that we need to place front and center to the top of those 4 pillars with those bullet points, and I think we'll see results. Arjun mentioned a stat, 90,000. There are 300,000 engineering graduates in Ontario who are not PEO licensed, and I don't know if they're OSPE members,
Beatrice,
but that's 270. Oh, sorry, that's it.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Nick Colucci.
Thank you. So the advantage of going last is I can just say I agree with everything else that was said. But if you look on the OSPE website, the vision in the 2022 to 25 strategic plan says OSPE is the home of the entire engineering community in Ontario, where engineers come together to realize their full potential. The vision mentioned earlier is also on the website. There's 2 visions, I guess. But I think the vision has to include making OSPE a sustainable organization. So how do we make it sustainable? Well, we have to ensure that we have a long-term income stream so that we can maintain all the programs that we have. And a way to do that is, one is to increase membership, but also increase programs that are being paid. And a great way to do that is to look at the 90,000 PNGs, of which only 10% or so are members of OSPE now. They all need peak, and some of them need 14 hours of peak. So, that could generate a lot of income, and reaching out to them and making OSPE a sustainable organization will be what we need to do as part of our vision.
Nick, you're at time.
Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you all. Moving on to the next question, just to give you the order of responses, then Nick Colucci, Nick Bergwin, Beatrice, Peter, Marilyn, and Arjun. I'll read the question. It's a 2-part question, but we're going to ask you to respond to both parts in your 1 minute. As a board member, you'd be a brand ambassador of OSPE. How would you personally encourage more people to join OSPE? That's part A. Part B, what is OSPE's unique value proposition, and what strategy should the organization take to engage these future members? So again, we've got 1 minute, and Nick Colucci, you are first.
Thank you so much. So as a brand ambassador, I would promote OSPE, on social media and at engineering events. And, I'm a member of other organizations that are engineering organizations, Municipal Engineers Ontario, Ontario Public Works Association. And, I have presented on behalf of PEO at some of these events. So I would promote the presentation and do that at some of these events. And also, I would look at reaching out to the government and having more interaction with the government, which I have done on behalf of PEO. Second question is, what is the value proposition? Well, I mean, we're poised now. PEAK is now mandatory. So our value proposition is that we have some amazing training programs that could benefit all 90,000 PNGs and also the 300,000 graduates that aren't PNGs. And I think that number is low because it's probably more than that. But so that could be our value proposition. And the second part of our value proposition is that there are a lot of non-licensed engineers that also could benefit from training and being members of OSPI. So our membership could increase exponentially if
You're
we
at
do
time.
great marketing. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Burgwin, you are next up.
So I'm going to answer this in reverse. So I'll start with B first and then go back to A. I don't think OSPI has a single unique value proposition. I think it depends on the individual that you're speaking to from a member perspective. OSPI serves engineers broadly. That could be a new grad, that could be a student, that could be someone mid-career, that could be someone end of their career, or even a retiree. And so the different value propositions have to cater to those different individuals in their different stages of life and their career progression. And I think OSPI has done a pretty phenomenal job of having those different value propositions for those different member types or those different kind of career stages at which the members are at. So I think there's a very broad and kind of diverse value proposition strategy that has to be done and it has to be communicated to those different individuals at different stages of their career. And how to encourage kind of more people to join OSPI, I think the focus is on actually getting companies to start to provide corporate memberships in which that you can go to the companies and try to get those companies on board with supporting their engineers within their company to become members. I think that would be a quicker way to see a faster revenue membership growth and then drive more revenue.
Thank you. Beatrice, you are next up.
Yeah, I would agree and then also disagree with Nick, my esteemed colleague, Nick Burgwin, with what he just said. I would say that while it's true that OSPI has a very rounded value offering and all of it should be nurtured, I do think what sets OSPI apart in sort of, I guess, the market of things that one can join as an engineering graduate is its advocacy. And I think that my experience is there are actual companies who are interested in encouraging its employees to buy corporate memberships because they see a place where they can present a very effective brand, perhaps, and engineering thought leadership that sort of distinguishes them from their competitors or tries to sell their solutions to either the government or to the public. So while advocacy may feel like it's kind of overplayed, I do think it does remain a very unique and effective offering. Personally, I think the way that I would approach it is to continue to leverage my network and also to listen really for myself. I find starting with listening to hear what other engineers and organizations are interested in is a really good way to start. But I have found
Beatrice, you're at time.
yes, no problem. Starting by listening and then by speaking.
Thanks. Oh my goodness, I lost my place. Peter, you were next.
All right, thank you. I always have trouble with this kind of a question because it's very operational in nature. And I've experienced board members that come to the board and have their personal thoughts about, well, how we can increase membership by doing this or that. And one of the things management told us in this last cycle is the board kept providing them different direction every year. Somebody had a pet theory about membership, and for whatever reason, the board directed management to go in that direction. And then next year, we directed management to go in another direction. I can tell you that OSPI management spends their lives thinking about how to increase membership. They focus on the social sciences, so they're very technical at it. And to Nick's point, have developed this concept of 4 personas. So the value proposition of a member depends on what stage of life you're in your career. As a retired engineer that's not practicing, I value OSPI's advocacy role and the work that it does to bolster the image of the profession. As a young engineer, that may not be what I'm looking for. As a current board member, I can assure you we have a high-performing board. We have a CEO and leadership staff that are achieving great things over and above what you would expect from a small organization. So the role of the board is to speak as one body, not to go out and speak as individuals, and to support and enhance the capability of management and the organization.
Peter, you're at time. Marilyn.
I love the fact that I just get to follow Peter all day, and I'll just keep saying yes and. So it's true with the personas and what Nick was saying. It's that there is a very well thought out value proposition for different phases of life. But when I'm faced with somebody in front of me who says, why should I join? I usually start with the easy one. Just call the personal insurance and find out how much you're going to save if you join. Then when you get on board, please come along and find out who you can network with. This is where you're going to find your people. This is especially for those who have been like me in a career where you're not really surrounded by engineers, you're in non-traditional fields. This is where you can find your people, you can network. Then, as you get further in your career and you want to start contributing your subject matter expertise, you can join the advocacy task forces, and you can really have an impact on the profession and what's going on in your own industry. So it's a place to come and spend your whole career. Intrigued by how much they're going to save today, and then hope they stay with all of the great things that OSPI offers.
Thank you. Arjan.
Thank you, Megan. So I think it goes back to a financial viability organization depends on membership. So how do we increase membership? And that goes back to the question of what is our value proposition? I don't know why we can't have different value proposition for different demographics. Organization like ours and others do that all the time. So understanding that is critical, really. And to how personally I would do that, I would leverage my work at PO chapter level, at the council level, at the Engineers Canada level. And first I have to be educated by the board and by the organization. What are those value propositions that I'm advocating for? And then you'll be able to articulate them in a salient manner. In terms of what is that in my opinion, again, the OSPI's got a unique opportunity and proposition that PO cannot offer, for instance. I mean, the biggest thing I've noticed and experienced, a lot of people at chapter level, they're looking for networking, learning, engaging with peers, social events. What better place than OSPI? Isn't that sort of a clear answer to that question? How do we engage them? I mean, and frankly, I think given what some of the contacts I've got, the connection I've got, it's easy to articulate that. I'll give you a personal example. In 20.
Arjan, you're at time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Moving on to the third question then. Before I state the question, just to give you the order of responses, Peter, Nick Bergwin, Beatrice, Nick Colucci, Arjan, and Marilyn. Question is, what do you believe is the biggest challenge or threat to the engineering profession? And what would you consider would be the opportunities for OSPI to respond to this challenge or threat? We're starting with Peter. Peter, you have 1 minute.
All right, thank you. The first challenge, and I've got three, I just categorized it as globalization. What I'd say is less and less engineering is being done in Ontario, and it's being done in other parts of the world. When I was with ESA, whole factories were being floated in on barges from other countries to be assembled in Ontario. The second challenge, and it's been raised, is emerging disciplines, and that don't neatly fit into our traditional categories of engineering. Ironically, I'd note that some of those emerging disciplines are probably 20 years old or more at this point. So if we want to incorporate these emerging disciplines, we radically need to think of new regulatory models. Finally, we've seen how technology has already disrupted other professions and trades. I've had discussions with accountants and people in the insurance industry who are already preparing for the impacts of AI. I don't have the foresight to predict how that's going to affect professional engineers, but I'm not so naive to think that it's not going to happen to us. So the best way to respond to that is for OSPI and our profession to remain relevant, to make sure that the government and the people of Ontario understand why we are relevant and the value that we provide
Peter,
to
you're at time.
the province. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Bergwin, you are next.
Perfect, thank you. I think the biggest challenge at the moment is CPD, continuous professional development in Ontario, at least in that landscape. Peak has come into practice, and so if you're a practicing engineer, you have to have some number of hours that kind of illustrates your professional development that you've done in a year. I think that this could have negative impacts from a PEO perspective in terms of how many people remain as licensed professional engineers, and that could dramatically change from the 90,000 to a much lower number, depending on if there are that many practicing engineers in Ontario that still see value in being a licensed professional engineer. From an OSPI perspective, though, the opportunity there is to deliver some of that kind of education. So the Ontario Education Academy, the Ontario Engineering Academy from OSPI has been the effort to try and develop those courses that can help assist individuals with their peak and their CPD hours. And I think that's a great opportunity for the organization. It is going to take a lot of work to figure out how that should be implemented and how we can make that sustainable. But I think it's a great opportunity.
Thank you. Beatrice, you are next.
Yeah, for me, it's emerging disciplines. As Peter correctly mentioned, a lot of these emerging disciplines are about 20 years old. The horses out of the barn, as it were. AI, ChatGPT, many of us probably have colleagues who are 20, 30 years out who have been building these technologies without being licensed and really part of the community. And many of them who were my clients wanted to be part of the community. They wanted guidance. They wanted the opportunity to speak as subject matter experts among themselves to each other to develop norms of practice that can translate the engineering principles of safety and ethics and good governance to the technology they're working on today. But that hasn't existed until now. Happily, the opportunity that Nick mentioned, CPDs, I think is it's not a barrier, it's an opportunity, truly. I think to solve many problems or address many demographics with one shot. And emerging disciplines is definitely one. We can invite folks to the OSPI family to help develop CPDs for these emerging disciplines. We can engage in a dialogue with PEO and regulation. I think we should not shy away. I think we should lean in terms of setting the tone for this conversation, and I would be very much happy to support that on the board should I join. Thank you.
Nick Colucci, you are next.
Thank you for the question. I'll go a little different with my challenge. I think the biggest challenge to the engineering profession would be the dilution of the definition of engineering by regulatory changes that are made without the consultation of the engineering profession. We've seen a number of regulatory changes in the past that directly affect the role of engineers in legislation. The word engineer has been replaced by qualified professional in a number of laws. The Municipal Act has removed the requirement for engineer as a public works, as director of public works, but they still kept in CAO and clerk. The Building Code Act was changed. The Electrical Code Act was changed. Farfacta has have in unintended consequences that PEO can't issue engineering training licenses anymore. So all those things affect the engineering profession. Thank you.
Thank you. Arjan, you are next.
Thank you, Megan. So I could say the same thing as Marilyn was saying all evening, this and that. So what there's a lot has been discussed, and I think in terms of the threats are obviously we're talking about the for 20 years the emerging disciplines and just recently a case in Alberta, the government in there is changing the even definition of engineer, that you can essentially be allowed to call yourself an engineer if you're a software engineer without being a licensed engineer. So it's a threat, correct, to our profession. So I think more immediately for us at OSPI in opportunities, frankly, I think Nick talked about this as well, is the ability to leverage what PO requires as peak CPDs, as well as, in my opinion, just I've mentioned this earlier, embracing the chapters, bringing that membership on board, getting them what they're looking for. So it's a great opportunity in terms of increasing a financial viability of OSPI. So those are really immediate ones. And then obviously we need to look at what are the other issues actually concerning this whole aging population, climate crisis, emerging disciplines, and the threats of AI, what kind of role can we play? What can we do? So there's a lot, but I think we need to tackle very sort of bite-sized opportunities we can manage and the time that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn.
Yeah, this is hard to go last. It's a lot of what everybody's talking about. I am going to focus on emerging technologies and these causing or creating more emergent disciplines and very much more interdisciplinary. It's well known that engineers don't work on alone. They work on teams of people, and it's hard to talk about that without seeing the delusion of the engineering voice on there. So I think this is where we need to make sure that, you know, in the age of artificial intelligence, people know that artificial intelligence was built by engineers too, right? That needs to get out there. It's not just scientists, it's not computer scientists. I see that's what the media calls it. Engineers are there building. And so I think our advocacy is really where it's at. It's us, OSPI, getting in front of the public, the policymakers, the political decision makers, and making sure that everybody knows where engineers play a part, especially in these emerging disciplines. Yes, and to all of the things that everybody was saying, I would love to sit on this board and have these great discussions with this group. It's really, truly great.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to move on to the fourth question, and just the order. Then Marilyn, you are first the next time. So Marilyn, then Nick Bergwin, Peter Marcucci, Beatrice Arjen, and Nick Colucci. Question is, what would you say is the biggest opportunity or strength facing OSPI? And what can the organization do to take advantage of this? So again, what would you say is the biggest opportunity or strength facing OSPI? And what can the organization do to take advantage of this? So over to Marilyn.
So I don't like this random generator when I have to talk back to back and say almost exactly the same thing. OSPI's strength, we just had the best Queen's Park turnout and impact ever. And I think this is OSPI's strength. They've figured out how to get the task forces working in the things that matter to politicians. They've figured out how to get into the offices of the politicians and have those critical conversations. And this, I think they should just keep building on developing the right task forces and steering everybody in the right direction that turns out these great white papers that turn out an opinion from the engineering community that we can put in front of the decision makers.
Thank you. Nick Bergwin, you are next.
I would definitely echo what Marilyn said. I think OSPI's strength has been in advocacy. It's getting better and better. They've really found a way to make the task forces really work for the benefit of the organization and strengthen the advocacy that the organization as a whole is doing. And I think that comes from being a small organization that is nimble and able to change. The willingness to try new things, the willingness to see what works, evaluate it. If it doesn't, to make a change, to try to adapt, to make it better, to implement something in a different approach. That nimbleness and that flexibility is really an opportunity for OSPI to continue to refine, to continue to perfect. And then when you can see something working, really dig in and lean into what is working. And the advocacy work has gotten better and better after the changes to the task forces over the past few years. And I think it's working phenomenally well.
Thank you. Peter Marcucci, you are next.
Thank you. So I focused on three things that I consider the opportunities or strengths of OSPI. First and foremost, OSPI is the voice of professional engineers in Ontario. I've heard people lament that we only represent 8,000 engineers in the province. And you know what? There's no other organization that represents as many engineers in Ontario as we do. And OSPI should not be shy to say we are the voice of engineers. In the past, we were a little reticent to speak out. We don't need to ask permission to speak on behalf of professional engineers. OSPI has found its voice. When the government or media wants to know what engineers think, they will turn to OSPI. Mandatory professional development is a unique opportunity for membership growth and to provide services. And the board and management have been making investments to support the strategies to implement mandatory CPD for our members. OSPI as an organization is very well run. The organization punches well above its weight. My previous colleagues talked about the success of the task forces. Well, one of the roles that the board took is we kept saying, why are task forces reporting to the board? That's not where they belong. So we said, you know what? Good government says the task force should report to the CEO. And we made that change, and
Peter,
they
you're
are
at time.
better. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Beatrice, you are next. Beatrice, I think your mute is on.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to pick up on what Peter was saying for everyone who's watching today. Regardless of the outcome of this election, one of the great things about this board is they had the wisdom and the humility to divest their supervisory power from the task forces a few years ago. And I had front row seats to this as I was chair of a task force to witness the positive effects that that has had on the operational team, the CEO Sandro, who's wonderful, and his team, and volunteers like you to engage with us as we do member-driven advocacy. So that is a credit to the culture and the leadership and the tone that has been set, and I think we see the fruits of that. So that's something to be applauded and to have faith in and have trust in this board and the wisdom to see that. So I would echo that. I think another opportunity is CPDs. I will continue to hound that as a great emerging opportunity to engage those 300,000 members. Not that we have to, but it's just an opportunity to bring folks to the table who are not PNGs, who don't necessarily see themselves traditionally represented. And again, for me, that's the emerging disciplines, because there is, I think, a definite appetite for that now because their work is so relevant. And there is a hunger for those ethical principles. And we have an opportunity to provide a platform and a community for them not only to socialize, to develop at every stage of their careers, but also to advocate, to clarify what their technology is and what it isn't.
Thanks, Beatrice. Arjen, you are next up.
Thank you, Megan. So again, I could say, and that. So there's a lot of good stuff to say. And one of the reasons, actually, Peter mentioned this, that OSPI is a very well-run organization, a good board, and I concur with that. That's one of the reasons I'm seeking showing my interest in seeking nomination tonight, and hopefully I get a chance to actually be part of this organization. It is a well-run organization. Advocacy is its job. It's an opportunity to focus more. But again, more tactically, what we need to be focusing on, making sure that we are viable. So we need to look at the low-hanging fruits. Where can we leverage that right away to increase our membership? Even though I understand that 8,000 may be the strongest number, but when we look at the numbers we talked about earlier, 90,000 PNGs, over 300,000 engineering students and grads, that's a huge number. So when I look at 7,000 or 8,000 OSPI members, I think we can do a lot. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. And that is what I mentioned before, chapters. Let's focus on that. Let's get them. Let's them bring on board, increase, double our membership numbers. We can do better. And so there's low-hanging fruit. And I think we can leverage that. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Kouchi, over to you.
Thank you so much. I think OSPI has some amazing strengths and some opportunities. The first opportunity that came to my mind when I thought about this question is that we have 90,000 professional engineers that are license holders at Professional Engineers Ontario, and we have a direct conduit to all of those, each of those members, because they all need to do mandatory CPD. So I think that's our direct conduit to make OSPI more sustainable, as an organization, both in gaining more members and also in increasing the items provided to the membership to make funds for us. And the other strength, yes, is the task forces, and we do have an opportunity to make those task forces more viable for our membership by looking at the fees that members get and the salaries that members get, because I think that you'll get more membership if you can show that OSPI has increased their pocketbook by increasing their salary, by increasing consulting fees. And I think we have a big opportunity there to show the government and to show municipalities and to show firms that engineers are worth more than they're paid now.
Thank you, Nick. Wonderful. We're halfway through, just about. Just the next question as we get into that, the order will be Beatrice and Arjan, Nick Colucci, Marilyn, Nick Bergwin, and Peter. Fifth question. What would you say is the board's role versus the role of management, and where should the board focus its time and energy? Beatrice, when you're ready.
So this is a non-operational board of a not-for-profit organization. So what that means is it's kind of like running a plane versus air traffic control. So Sandro Perusa, who most of you know, is Craig Gregarious and his team, they operate a plane and they fly in a particular direction. This is kind of how I see it. The board are the strategic vision makers. They set the path. They tell the plane where to go for the next 3 to 5 years. And indeed, this particular board is going to be setting the next 5-year plan for 2025 to 2027, I think. We're doing the next 5-year plan. So we'll be setting the direction and the vision. But I think as like to be said, I think particularly on this board, the language is nose in, fingers out. Right. So we are not the day-to-day managers. We don't get involved in how Sandro and his team executes on things like ensuring that we are the voice of the engineering profession in a bipartisan manner, that we are inclusive and that we are engaging multidisciplines. We simply hold those values to be his focus, right? And then he sets the team. And the task forces fall under that, right? And there's good reason for that, which I won't get into. But yeah, that's the difference, I would say. And I may have missed something. Oh, sorry. Energy, emerging disciplines.
Thank you. Arjan, you're next.
Thank you. So I don't know, Beatrice, maybe you were reading my notes because I had exactly that. The term that we use in governance is NIFO. That's so true because frequently there are boards that are challenged is because they don't appreciate the difference between what is operation, what is in their realm. And I think from all the things I've been hearing tonight, for all the things I heard, OSPI is not in the operation board, it's a governance board, and that's what the difference is. The board's role is to hire and fire the CEO, set the organization's vision, mission, values. And they have got only one employee, that's the CEO. And if you understand that as a board, and that's a fantastic board, and then you give the CEO the direction, you monitor the organization's performance through a clear set of objectives and goals and performance metrics, you don't have an issue. Obviously, you do periodic check with the CEO and the executive team to see how well the team is delivering on the mandate and strategy developed by the board. And I think from what I'm hearing, everybody around this table understands that. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick Colucci, you are next.
Thank you so much. So I think, as mentioned earlier, the role of the board is to act as a strategic policy-making body for the society. And a secondary role is to ensure that we maintain consensus throughout the decision-making process for the policies. And, obviously the staff implement that strategic policy, and, the policy strategic direction are the responsibility of the board, while the operational detail is responsibility of the staff. So as mentioned earlier, hands and fingers out, that's a great way to approach it. And I think, this term we have a focus on a strategic plan. So that will be, take up a lot of our time in the next year. So we'll have to work on that. And I've worked on a number of strategic plans in the past.
Thank you. Marilyn, over to you.
Okay, so like many people have already said, we got two big roles as a board. We have to make sure the right person is running our ship or our plane for that matter. So do we have the right CEO? And does that CEO have the right objectives by following the strategic plan that we have? So we have to make sure that OSPI as an organization survives. That's one of our biggest roles. Is it going to keep surviving? How does it survive? It makes sure that it meets the members' needs and it attracts members. And we do that through the strategic plan. We also do that by having very courageous conversations at the board table, looking forward into the future. What's coming down the pipe? Are there crises that we could make a plan for that we might not know. We need to make sure that we're doing those. We need to look retrospectively to make sure that we've put the right policies in place that and they're being well run. And that's basically the gist of what I could add to what everybody said. That's been great. Thanks.
Thanks, Marilyn. Nick Bergwin.
Yeah, I don't really want to repeat what everybody said. I think the role of the board is pretty clear amongst all of us. We're not operational, very much strategic. I think where the board should spend most of its time and energy, kind of focusing more on the second part of the question, is on monitoring and tracking and doing the analysis on how are the operational folks tracking to the strategic plan. Is it getting delivered? Is it happening? Is it aligned to what we wanted to see? There also could be strategic plans aren't necessarily right. It could be wrong. Something could change. Something significant could change, such as COVID, for instance, comes in and shakes the whole world. And so the board really needs to be looking at the larger picture. They need to be looking forward in terms of what is it that might have to change? What is it that might have to shift? And the best way to do that is tracking, monitoring, and analyzing the performance of really how the organization is operating.
Thank you. Peter, last word to you.
Thank you. People have mentioned the board has 3 roles: to hire the CEO and support the CEO's performance, to work with management to develop the strategic plan, and to oversee and monitor the organization, acting in the best interests of the organization. I can't emphasize enough the concept of tone at the top. I think that I've seen how that tone can change with just the change of a few board members, and what becomes a functional board and a great relationship with management dramatically goes downhill. When I first joined the OSPI board in 2015 to 2018, OSPI had gone through a period where they had 5 or 6 CEOs in about 5 or 6 years. That's not a failure of the CEO. That's a failure of the board. And we've heard in the news that the Boeing CEO has decided to leave the company. Well, I can tell you, the problem goes above the CEO. The board sets the tone for that CEO, so the board needs to change as well. The OSPI board has come a long way, but it doesn't take a lot to create a board that's not as effective as it was.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, and the order of responses: Arjan, Peter, Nick Bergwin, Marilyn, Nick Colucci, and Beatrice. So 6th question. In your view, what is the most challenging aspect of being a good board member? So again, in your view, what is the most challenging aspect of being a good board member? Arjan, you are up first.
Thank you, Megan. So I sit on 4 different boards currently, and the most challenging thing is really to actually making the time commitment to be an effective board. If you don't have the time, don't bother joining a board, because it requires that you read the board material, spend the time learning about the organization. There's a big gap between the board members' knowledge and the CEO's knowledge. There's actually an order of magnitude. So there's a chasm. So that for you to be an effective board member, you have to know your stuff, and you have to have the trust of the CEO and the leadership that you are actually engaged member of the board, that you are going to be listening, you're going to be directing, that you're not going to come to the board meeting not having read the material. And you know what? I know for a fact when my ET, the executive team, knows when board members come to the board ill-prepared or not prepared at all, or actually not making commitment and then not showing up to the board meetings. So that is what I found really for some boards that I sit on, it's perfect. It's great. Electrical Safety Authority Board is one of the best boards I sit on. Engineers Canada is another great board, but some boards other boards aren't as good. So recognizing that you as a board is good by having good board members. If those members are not willing to the time, then board is not effective. Thank you.
Peter, over to you. Peter, you are on mute. Take your time.
There we go. Sorry about that, folks. There's a few sort of sayings that stuck with me through my tenure at the Directors College, and one relates to the role of a board member. And a board member has to do 3 things. They have to be curious. A board member's role is to ask questions and to probe. They have to be courageous. You can't be afraid to ask a tough question. And they have to be collegial. You have to do it in a manner that works with your other board members, because the board speaks with one voice, and you have to do it in a manner that does not threaten or disrupt the relationship with management. So courageous, collegial, and curious are the three attributes of a good board member. One of the challenges for engineers is engineers are problem solvers. They like to get in there and provide solutions. And I think the biggest challenge for engineers that sit on boards is to step back. And Beatrice, you used the comment before, noses in, fingers out. That's the way a board member needs to operate. And I think we've done that on the OSPI board, very much so. And we've got a great relationship with the management team.
Thank you, Peter. Nick Bergwin, over to you.
Thank you. I think one of the most challenging things about being a board member is actually too much consensus. You might all at the board level actually agree with a decision or with a proposal that is brought forward by a committee or by the executive team. Everybody just might agree. They might just think, yep, that's great. There's 12 members on this board, but we all think that that's a great strategy to go forward. And I think one of the hardest things to do is to be that opposition voice, even if you don't necessarily believe in opposing that particular proposal. So I think there are a couple board members that are very good at this. That my experience at the OSPI board, there was a couple of board members that were very good at being the adversarial opinion, even if they weren't themselves in agreement with the adversarial view. But I think that that's a really challenging thing for a good board member to do, is you always have to be thinking about what's the devil's advocate position.
Thank you. Marilyn, you're next.
So we begin every board meeting by reminding us all that we have to be curious, we have to be courageous, and we have to be collegial. And along the same lines as what Nicholas said, for me personally, it has been being able to take the contrary perspective and really start, like, put myself in the opposite shoe and see, can I ask this in a collegial way? Can I raise this in a different way? Am I looking at it the same way everybody else is? What if we come at it differently? That and pose it as a contrarian in a very polite and kind way. That for me has personally been where I've grown. We had a offsite where we had to argue the opposite of what we did. And I grew a lot from that exercise because I didn't like having to say something I didn't believe in, but I now started to understand why. Better conversations, better decisions, better understanding of the impacts of those decisions because you do it.
Thank you. Nick Colucci, please.
Thank you for the question. I think, on a similar vein to some of the previous speakers, I think the most difficult thing is to respectfully ask the difficult questions and still be able to maintain consensus once your questions are answered and once things are resolved. Maintaining consensus after the board meeting is important because we need to show a united front as a board. So, for me, that's the most difficult thing because, obviously when you have a larger board of directors, not everyone will be in agreement with what the decision was or what the proposal was made by staff. But you have to ask those respectful questions, get the answers, and then still be able to come up with a consensus and agree to that, after the board meeting is over. Thank you.
Thank you. And Beatrice, last word to you.
Yes, agree with everything that's said. My observation from my work experience with different boards, particularly boards with many engineers, is a lot of what Peter has said. We have a tendency, this particular profession, we go very deep into the details. Lawyers can be accused of the same, but we have a lot of hard training where we are forced to go high. Otherwise, we get dinged in other ways. You can get very into the details. I think for myself, being sort of an engineer in the community, a challenge for me personally is adjusting my tone, I suppose. 6 years of hard training and the Socratic method teaches law students to always take the other side of the coin and consider it as just part of the natural way of talking out a problem. And sometimes, perhaps I'm a bit younger seeming, and maybe my demographic can sometimes feel like I'm attacking folks because I have a very sunny disposition. So if Beatrice is disagreeing with you, it might seem like there's a tone issue there. So for me, I think it is adjusting the tone. But I think those who have worked with me historically for more than like maybe a minute realize that it's always coming in a good place, in a good spirit. And I fully agree. The best boards I have observed always take the time to, after the official business is done, to take some time to humanly reconnect with everybody. And that is just a very natural, a good practice that I have seen consistently over 6 years and different
Yeah.
boards. So
Thank you. Great discussion. Okay, moving on to our seventh question. Sorry, seventh question. It's another two-parter, and the order I have is Nick Bergwin, Beatrice Arjan, Peter, Nick Colucci, and Marilyn. It's a two-part, remember, and so answer both parts in your minute. There's a lot of confusion over the competing roles of OSPI and PEO, especially amongst the chapter network events. A, how can we bring clarity to this? And B, paint a picture of the future of chapters. So how can we bring clarity to this and paint a picture of the future of chapters all in 1 minute? Nick Bergwin, you were up first.
Alrighty. I think there'll always be confusion between the role of OSPI and PEO. I just think that that's the landscape that the two organizations operate within. I mean, for the folks here, we all understand that PEO is the regulator and then OSPI is the advocacy body, but that those lines get drawn when you're not kind of in it or you're very active within the community. And so I think it's natural that there's always going to be confusion at that level. How do you bring clarity to this? I think you continue to speak to what the roles of the organizations are, and you keep repeating that message. And I think that's just the reality of life, is that you have to keep reminding people of what the lay of the land is. From a chapter perspective, I think this is a choice for PEO to decide whether or not chapters are a regulatory function. I'm in the personal belief that the chapters are not a regulatory function and they should not be with PEO. And I think that is an opportunity for the chapters to roll into an advocacy group, OSPI in this case, to then manage the chapters. And I think that might actually help establish more clarity, but I don't think that's the choice of OSPI at the moment. The role of the chapters is a choice that PEO has to make.
Thank you. Beatrice.
with respect and love, I disagree. I believe that there someday we can actually know as a profession the difference between the chapters and OSPI. That does exist, that clarity does exist in other professions. So I think continued communication and constructive dialogue between OSPI and PEO in a transparent and open way for our membership to view is one way of doing that. PEO, as we all know, serves to protect the public from us, and we serve a primary function to advocate on behalf of us, right? So I think that, and I fully agree that the decision lies with the registrar on what to do with their existing chapter system. But perhaps as the voice of the engineering profession, perhaps as the devil's advocate that asks questions of the regulator and the community at large, perhaps a question of where the chapters might go if they were to leave the regulator. I also I stand with Nick. I do personally think that the chapters is not really an appropriate place within the independent regulator. There's a public perception issue through no necessary fault of those who are involved, but there is an issue with a lot of the sponsorship and perceived coziness with industry when they are meant to regulate us as professions. So yeah, perhaps a concerted questioning, as the voice of the profession, asking, taking that tone. Yeah.
Thank you. Arjan, over to you.
Thank you. So actually, I agree with both of you. I think, frankly, there is confusion, and there shouldn't be any confusion, in my opinion. I think it's easy if we had PO. I mean, if you guys have spent 5 years in PO council, you would understand why the confusion exists. It is really rooted in the PO, unfortunately. So unfortunately, a lot has changed and improved at PO since the last 5 years. Actually, PO is focusing more and more on its role to regulate the profession. And the fact that we had a discussion with you guys, and OSPI PO had discussion in January of this year, is a testament to their change in tone and understanding. And I couldn't agree any more than what's been said already, that chapters do not belong with PO. I've been pushing that since 5 years. I had a conversation 5 years ago with Sandra. I said, can you please take the chapters from PO? We can function much better. And I'll continue to do that, and I will continue to do that when I join, if I do join the OSPI board, and if I'm so lucky to join the OSPI board, I will advocate for that, because I think that's where chapters belong, because they do the role of advocacy, and they'll be happier with us, with OSPI. So I think that's the straightforward in my view. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, over to you.
Thank you. OSPI has and will continue to advocate to the PEO and the government that the PEO needs to focus on its regulatory role. As a former regulator, I understand what that role is. Unfortunately, quite honestly, there's not majority support within PEO Council to make those changes. And unless the government is prepared to act unilaterally, it's going to take some time. So we deal with competitors in other areas of our business, OSPI, and we will continue to grow and prosper within this role confusion. It would be easier if it wasn't there, but it is, and we'll deal with it as we have been. We compete with other associations and organizations in other areas. With respect to the chapters, quite honestly, I think we need to take a broader perspective. It's really about member engagement, and chapters is only one way to engage members. As mentioned, the OSPI board did meet with the PEO Council to talk about chapters, and it was a good meeting and a good start, but I don't think there was a real desire among the PEO to talk about a change. So while the concept of chapters has a role going forward, I think particularly among younger folks, and I'm not one of them, so is that concept still what younger people, younger engineers, is that the way they want to gather and want to work together? It may be an outmoded concept.
Thank you, Peter. Nick Gucci, over to you.
Thank you. So there is confusion over the two organizations, but I can tell you that the Attorney General doesn't have a confusion over what the regulator is to do and what the advocacy body is to do. So, you know, PEO is a regulator, so basically we're the hammer, right? PEO is the hammer, and if you do something wrong as an engineer, we'll hit you with the hammer and take away your license or issue that. So you don't really want to hear from PEO, but you do want to hear from OSPI. So that's the main difference, right? When you get email from OSPI, you're happy because they're going to offer you some member benefit. Whereas when you're getting email from PEO as a license holder, you're saying, oh no, what do they want now? Now I have to do peak. So, you know, that's the main difference. As far as chapters now, you know, my entire career, I volunteered at PEO chapters. And, you know, though there's a lot of discussion about PEO chapters and whether they're regulatory, whether they're advocacy, you know, they do some of both. They do some regulatory and they do some advocacy. And, you know, I could see that, you know, OSPI needs to collaborate with chapters. And, you know, the cost of chapters,
Thank you, Nick.
to operate chapters, it's over $1 million per year. So it might be a little bit much for OSPI to take over, but I think if we try to collaborate with PEO, with the operation of chapters, we could eventually take them over once we increase our membership, and that $1 million.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
You're right on. Thank you. Marilyn, last word to you.
Yeah. So tough question. How do we bring clarity to the difference between PEO and OSPI without sort of the help of PEO? We're just going to assume that we're going to go ahead. It's about getting our message out there. Like Peter said, you know, we deal with competitors. It's about getting the message out there that we're here for advocacy, and that we're here to help you with your profession. We're here to help you along the road to get your licensing. When you need CPD, we're here to help. When you do run into a problem, we're here to help. So OSPI offers all of that. And when it comes to, how do we engage our members? It really is, how do we get our regional strategy and outreach met? And what is an effective way to do that? Yes, we had, some constructive conversations in January. They were a good start. We need to continue focusing on what OSPI needs to do. And we are the voice of the entire engineering community, which means we invite more people than just P-Engines to our events. And we invite the corporate sponsors, and we can do that without any conflict of interest. We need to just get out there and do that. And we'll follow the management's lead on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you. Moving on to our 8th question. Order is Nick Colucci, Marilyn, Nicholas Bergwin, Beatrice, Peter, Arjan. How would you like to see the relationship between PEO and OSPI evolve during your term? We're going to start off with Nick Colucci, please.
Thank you. And I love this question because I've been grappling with it for the last 24 years since OSPI was created. Because, obviously PEO created OSPI, so they had a really great relationship at the beginning. And then things happened, and we went through 7 CEOs at OSPI, which changed how OSPI and PEO dealt with each other. But I would like to see the relationship strengthened, be more collaborative. I would like to see OSPI and PEO working together, both with the chapters, with all the license holders, and providing training and peak and all those benefits that OSPI provides to all members of OSPI, also to all members of PEO. So I would like to see that relationship strengthened. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn, please.
So I would like to see some basic trusts get built. Building on that discussion that we had in January, getting to know each other at a personal level and understanding where people where people are actually thinking rather than believing something that they've heard several years ago. I think continuing to have those conversations and building the trust. I'm going to say that we also need to have tension constantly. Regulator advocacy. We need to make sure that OSPI can hold its own to hold PEO accountable for what it needs to do as well. That strengthens our profession, and that's what we also need to do. So going forward, more collaboration in a personal trust level and being able to hold those tensions respectfully.
Thank you. Nicholas Bergwin, please.
Thank you. I think Marilyn's point is fantastic. I think a strong regulator needs a strong advocacy group, and the reality is that the advocacy group might be lighting the fire under the regulator for certain instances or certain things that happen, and that shouldn't tarnish a relationship. That relationship should still be maintained, should still be collegial, should still be collaborative, but there is always going to be the need for tension. So I think that the best way to build that ability to have that tension exist is to build a more human relationship between the two organizations. And I think that there's just a need for more communication.
Thank you. Beatrice, over to you.
It's like we need a lawyer on the board who's also an engineer. Very often in law, people think that lawyers who fight on other opposite sides really hate each other, and they go at it in court to really hold each other to account to advance their client's interests. But very often, after hours in chambers, these are some of the most respected colleagues. They will follow each other on Twitter when they know that they hold opposing views. This is a well-worn cultural tradition, one that I'm very proud to have been part of and have been able to offer the engineering community these last 10 years. So yeah, I fully agree with that. I I haven't been on the board of OSPI or PEO all this time, so I don't really have any of the personal knowledge, and I'm very happy and collegial to work with everyone that I meet professionally, so I would definitely bring that naivete perhaps. But also, I think that the tone, Peter talked about tone, and I really agree with this, that perhaps a move building upon the trust that this board has created is perhaps a tone of that friendly advocate, that friendly devil's advocate, that PEO could pick up the phone and call, hey, can we hash out some different models? And as the voice, we can do that. We speak for licensed and non-licensed engineering graduates. We can perhaps do a study, maybe with some M&A law experience, on what maybe an acquisition would look like. Not that we'll do it, but we can at
Thank
least
you,
map
Beatrice.
it out. Things like that.
Thank you. Thank you. Peter.
Thank you. Although it may sound counterintuitive, one of OSPI's roles is to help support the PEO to become a better regulator, because I believe that a strong regulator is in the best interests of our profession. And others have talked about the relationship between the advocacy body and the regulator. And I experienced this relationship in the Electrical Safety Authority, dealing with the Electrical Contractors Association and the Ontario Electrical League. There needs to be a healthy tension between the regulator and the body that it regulates. You don't want a regulator that's captured by the advocacy body, nor do you want an advocacy body that defers to everything the regulator wants to do without providing input on behalf of its members. I think we've taken, now, I can assure you that there is constructive dialogue going on every day between the respective CEOs and the counterparts within the organization. That's happening, perhaps in spite of the boards, right? So it's incumbent on the boards now to reach out, and we've started that process to build a trust at the board level and continue to build a relationship.
Thank you, Peter. Arjan, last word to you.
Thank you, Megan. I think a lot of good things have been said. The key really is, for me, was revelatory in January. When you start having that trusting relationship, the dialogue, when the door opens and you can sort of have that ability to communicate, which was lacking in the last 5 years. Frankly, in January, we started to talk. So I see that we can build a partnership based on trust and mutual assurance of survival, because I think this regulatory body is not disappearing. Their role is to stay. They can regulate, and I think we can survive and thrive together, and to the benefit of the engineering profession in Ontario, by having that trusting relationship, by having that positive tension, by challenging PEO that not everything they do really is in the best interest of the protected public interest, and advocacy does not belong to them. So having those really frank conversations without feeling like we are undermining them, that is the way to do it. And I think we can, and I think we should. And I think I applaud you guys to coming to PEO in January and starting that dialogue. And we can build on that. So we have opened the door. Let's walk through the door now. Let's have that conversation. Let's build on that trust so we can actually work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the very last question. Order is Peter Marcucci, Beatrice, Nick Colucci, Arjan, Marilyn, and Nicholas Bergman. What is motivating you to join the OSPI board? Starting with Peter, 1 minute again.
Thank you. My motivation in joining the OSPI board is really to give back to the profession. As an engineer, I've enjoyed a good life and able to raise a family with a lot of security. So it's really to give back. And as you might have noticed, I'm pretty excited about corporate governance. So those are the two combinations. So I know firsthand that a high functioning board can create an environment for organizational success. And I've seen and experienced how dysfunctional boards can really tear down an organization. I believe I've contributed to OSPI and how its boards functions, and by extension, the success of the organization. And there's still some work to be done on the board governance, and I'd like to complete these tasks during my next term. And I'd also like to continue to mentor and coach the younger board members, because this would be my last turn at OSPI. And I'm really excited about some of the board members that we currently have and some that are running for re-election. So I'm looking forward to continuing my role with OSPI and then coaching and mentoring existing board members, and looking forward to the success that the organization is poised to achieve.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Beatrice, over to you.
Yeah, it's also service for me. I've spent the last 4 years in an operational role as chair of the task force. This is my first time really getting involved in either PEO or OSPI. And so you've sort of seen what I can do as an engineer, if that makes sense. I'd like to offer my abilities as a lawyer, which have not really been seen, because I really think I can add value. Much of that experience is behind the wall of privilege, which I take quite seriously. But I want to be at that next meeting with PEO and OSPI. I really do think that I would add value. I have been a mediator. I have been known within the legal community as that voice that everyone can go to. I'm new. I will fearlessly defend, but I will openly collaborate with all. Constructive trust is something that is built with time and with energy and effort that I'm most willing to put in. So that is why I am running.
Thank you. And Nick Colucci, you're next.
Thank you. So not only was I a member of OSPI in 2000 when it was created, I was also on council, and I approved the motion to create OSPI and to separate the regulatory and advocacy parts of that PEO was doing at that time. So I really feel a strong connection to OSPI, and I really want to ensure that the organization is successful and ensure that engineers have a stronger voice in Ontario. And I want to look at increasing the sustainability of the organization, increasing membership, increasing the programs that the organization does, and help the leadership team and the CEO to get everything done that needs to be done in a meaningful manner. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. And Arjan, please.
Thank you. Really, what motivates me is more or less some stuff has been already articulated to add value, to make a difference, and to give back. I worked with the PEO over the last 5 years on their new governance model and governance transformation, and we really brought PEO to a different level. That's why we had the conversation with you guys. They are really focusing on the regulated profession. Now I believe it's time for me to actually work on the advocacy side, to continue building on the working for the profession. I think I can leverage my knowledge of the profession and good board governance experience and recent training that I got the Institute of Corporate Directors and the University of Toronto. I believe I can make a difference, and more importantly, I think I can be the bridge between PEO and OSPI to begin working together with the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn, over to you.
Hi. So this is a great board, and it's become a very high performing board over the past 3 years that I've been on it. I've seen us go through the stages of getting rid of some of the very operational things. And I have grown a lot in my ability to contribute to the board. And it's been great having the mentors like Peter and Ray, who have mentored me through the presidency as well, and the chair of the board. And a conversation with Nick allowed me to figure out how I could turn my honorarium into payment into the ICD and get that designation. Now it's my turn to give back. So I'd like to become that mentor. I'd like to turn back to OSPI, take everything that I have learned in that director's education program and help the rest of the board continue to be a high performing board. We've come a long way, and we're just starting to really turn into some exciting conversations, and we have lots to look forward to, especially with the emerging disciplines we talked about earlier. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Marilyn. Nicholas Bergwin.
Thank you. I have two key motivators, one being continued kind of growth in membership. When I was on the board, we experienced the largest growth in membership, year-over-year growth. And I think that the organization now understands how to continue to grow membership at that rate, which is a fantastic opportunity. And I think that there's work still to be done to help support that, and to help understand now with the increased membership, with the increased revenue, what do we do as an organization with that kind of extra firepower? So I really want to be a part of the board to help kind of lay that foundation and then continue to utilize the increased membership and the stronger voice that the organization has. The second reason is to build on Marilyn's point. The board is comprised of phenomenal individuals. It's a phenomenal experience to challenge yourself as an individual. And I think it's just a great opportunity to work with really interesting people, really diverse folks that have different perspectives on things. And it's a great learning opportunity.
Thank you all. We are now going to take some questions from the audience. So please either text your question in. I know I see one already in the Q&A, and I believe we've received 2 others. So type your question in the question box in the Q&A, or raise your hand and staff will unmute you. At this moment, now I will turn it over to you.
Okay, we are running out of time, Megan, so we're going to take 2 more questions. So the first one will be, how will you promote diversity and inclusiveness, particularly for the internationally educated professional?
Who would like to respond first? Peter, I believe you had your hand up.
Right. I think a large part of that question is focused on the regulator and how the regulator can more quickly accommodate people that are foreign trained. I think within OSPI, it's the opportunity to open up our membership to those that may not necessarily have their PN designation, but are trained as engineers in other jurisdictions, and to provide them opportunities to make a real difference within the organization, including, we've changed the board composition so that sort of associate members can sit on the board. So it's reaching out to those folks and perhaps encouraging them to run for board positions. So OSPI is certainly trying to be more inclusive, but we've always got a ways to go. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Nicholas Bergwin, I think I saw your hand up next. Go ahead. And then Beatrice.
Yeah, I wanted to build on Peter's point because that was going to be my statement as well. They becoming professionally licensed is a PEO question, but I think this is one of OSPI's kind of abilities to have very targeted value propositions for individuals that have different backgrounds, different kind of levels within their career. Foreign trained individuals will have a different value proposition from an OSPI organization than someone trained in Canada. And I think that is an opportunity for a small, nimble organization like OSPI to cater to those types of individuals, bring them in as members, give them an opportunity to be a part of the community, and then also continue to advocate for them against the regulator to help them secure a pathway to becoming a professional engineer.
Thank you. Beatrice, please.
Yeah, I think that the question is how they can be engaged within the OSPI community. And so because we purport to be the voice of the entire engineering community, there's no issue. We can certainly provide the resources that Nick mentioned, but certainly making it clear that you need only be an engineering graduate from an engineering institution anywhere in the world in order to be an OSPI member is something that should be clearly communicated. I think that is the current policy. The team does currently do that work in order to approve membership. I think perhaps also encouraging foreign educated engineers to run for the board as well would be a very clear signal that they are full members of this community as we support them as emerging disciplines, as any engineering graduate who is not necessarily PN licensed. It should be made clear as a tone from the top that they are most welcome and fully recognized as a part of this community, because that's why we exist functionally, foundationally. Yeah.
Thanks, Beatrice. Oh, Arjan, go ahead. And then Marilyn, and then Nick.
Yeah. I think it's been said tonight a number of times. I think the tone starts at the top. So the board level, we have to show that we are not just talking in the talk, but we are walking in the talk, that we actually believe in diversity, that our board is reflecting that our society, what we exist today. And when you start with that, when you're looking at that, does our board look like Ontario? And if the answer is no, then we have a lot of work to do. If the answer is yes, we are actually working towards improving our composition at the board level. Diversity starts at the top, understanding that. And then obviously, if we have a policies that allow for foreign trained engineers to be actually members of OSPI, then advertising that and making sure people know, making sure they understand. I think we not only actually in terms of diversity, we have a great opportunity to attract these people because this is where we can help them how to get their licenses, to walk them through the processes. What are the challenges with getting their PO licenses? Those are things OSPI can easily do, and I think we just need to leverage that and let the new folks coming to Canada, which we're going to rely on them moving the next decade and the decades to come on foreign trained engineers. How do we leverage those skills? We don't want them to driving cabs. We do not want them to be sweeping our bathrooms. We want them to be actually working in the engineering profession. Let's leverage that skill that we brought these talents to this country. Let's make
you,
sure they
Arjun.
don't drive our Ubers. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn, please.
I think on top of all of these are all great ideas. One of the ways that OSPI works to include, get greater diversity and inclusion in the engineering profession as a whole is to take these international engineering graduates through in the academy and start helping them articulate what are their strengths, where are those needed, how to prepare for some of the workforce that exists. I work with a lot of internationally trained, not always engineers, but international students who have come over. They have their degrees and they're working, and that's where they struggle, is that translation of this is what I know and what I can do, and how does that apply to the workforce? OSPI does that. I've seen the work in the academy that they're doing through programs that they have, and people call Sandro directly. So I know they're doing it, and I would just make sure that they are able to continue doing that.
Thank you, Marilyn. And Nick, please. Colucci.
Thank you. Great question. So OSPI does have a task force on equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. So that task force is working on ways to, ally with other organizations like, Black Engineers Canada, Engineer Careers Canada, Indigenous groups, 30 by 30 groups. So all those groups can ally with OSPI and, to bring more equity into the engineering profession. And I think, Engineers Canada also has a program for 30 by 30 and other EDI programs that will help to bring engineers into Ontario. The recent FAR-FACTA legislation also has removed the requirement for Canadian experience for foreign trained engineers, which also will increase the number of foreign trained engineers that can actually get licensed and then also join OSPI as a member. So I think there's some great programs that are already established to increase EDI in Ontario.
Thank you, Nick. I think we have time for one more question. Val will read the question, but if I could, since we are running over time, if I could ask everybody to just give short remarks on this next question, please. Val, go ahead.
Can you share a specific example of how you engage directly with OSPI, with members of OSPI outside of participation in its board or any of its committees? And how have these interactions, or how will these interactions influence your approach to advocacy and decision-making within OSPI?
Does anybody want that question one more time, or are you all ready? You're good, okay. Nicholas Bergwin was first, and then Nick Colucci, and then I saw Beatrice.
So a specific example, I have worked with fourth year engineering students at U of T for about 7 years in a design course. In most cases, they are OSPI members, or I try to promote that they should become OSPI members, especially when the student membership is free. The fun conversation that I have is when they go to graduate is whether or not they're going to maintain their membership or not. This is a challenge with emerging disciplines. Most of these individuals I'm working in with electrical and engineering students. So AI, ML is kind of their target areas. Most are not becoming members. So from the perspective of how does that change, or how does that influence the work that I could do on the board, or how does that kind of impact the OSPI organization, we need to have a clearer value proposition for those emerging disciplines, and then we need to have a home for them to come to OSPI if they don't find themselves in a traditional engineering field.
Thank you. And Nick Colucci, please.
Thank you. Great question. And, again, I have been a brand ambassador for OSPI for 24 years, as well as a brand ambassador for PEO because I was on both on committees for both to get more members. But, as far as a direct relation, every engineer and, every professional engineer is a potential member for OSPI. So, I have spoken at numerous events and also at OSPI events. And when we did have some regional OSPI events where, I spoke there with members of OSPI promoting them to continue being members of OSPI and all the benefits of being a member of OSPI. So I think, we have great potential as board members to be brand ambassadors and to speak directly to members every single day, and not only at the board, but also at events. And I attend many engineering events in both my work life and my volunteer life.
Thank you. Beatrice?
Yeah, I have a huge network of mentees and mentors that I have reached out to through not only the task forces, but just mentorship has just been a huge part of my professional being whether I was in law or engineering. And so people who study the applied sciences generally find their way to me. I often encourage them to join OSPI and the task forces. I have also been the trusted confidant of a lot of engineering founders, folks who have either their PEngs or are engineering graduates working in AI and data spaces who have, sensitive legal issues. And so I become their engineer friend who is a lawyer. Many of them often are OSPI members, and if they're not, I often make that value proposition to them. And so I would continue to do that. And yeah, I have recently in the last 2 years been, engaged by a lot of foreign trained engineers. I recently had coffee with somebody who won't be able to vote likely in this election, but is very eager to be part of this community. So when I say, the tone, I think about all of these people. We're in the order of about 200 to 300 people, I think, at this point, over about 6 to 8 years of engagement. And it's those personal stories that sort of motivate my focus on the emerging disciplines, on foreign trained engineers, as well as advocating for those who are part of the traditional community who are seeking prosperity, from Queen's Park. That's why advocacy was my first lead. We only have so much time in our, in our volunteer area, so it's a natural fit for me.
Thank you,
But
Beatrice.
that's why it's close to my heart. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Arjun, you said you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Again, so actually, I joined the profession after sort of having my personal career sort of coming to a place where I can give back to the profession in 2016 as the Georgian Bay chapter with PEO. And after engaging for a couple of meetings and being there for a year or so, I realized and recognized most of the work that we did, the chapter level, was advocacy based. And then I turned around to my colleagues. I said, gosh, what are we doing work of OSPI here? We really are. We ought to be members of the OSPI. So leading by example, I joined OSPI in 2018, January 2018. And ever since, everywhere I go with the chapter event, as a role as a counselor and LGA, Lieutenant Government appointee, member of the board of PEO, I openly advocate for the membership of OSPI because it makes sense, frankly. It is the role that we should be telling people. And there's value to be had being an OSPI member. I mean, Marilyn talked about some of the financial aspect of it, but articulating that, telling them, and as I mentioned, a lot of key interest lies in most of those members being able to communicate, talk, and socialize, and OSPI can offer all of those.
Thank you, Arjun. Marilyn or Peter? Either of you?
I'll add short and sweet. Yep, I have been out there to the events and I have met many of you. And what I take is the stories that you tell me about your career and your struggles, and I make sure that at the board table I think about, would this decision affect this person positively, negatively, or indifferent, and use those. So look forward to hopefully meeting many more of you at these events.
Thank you. And Peter?
All right, thank you. And I will share the most recent example or encounter. I was actually at a dinner party with friends, and their future son-in-law was just graduating. He's a technologist and was just graduating, I think, from McMaster's with a BTech. And I knew that there were some challenges around that these days, and he was aware of that. And I said, well, you know, I don't have the expertise to help you directly, but I happen to know the folks that can help you. And I put him in touch with Sandro and Bejul, and they were able to connect and work him through the process of what he needs to do. And I know he's committed to one day working towards his PEng. And I know OSPI provides the services, the coaching and the mentoring to help folks like in his situation move through that process, because he does aspire to become a professional engineer.
Thank you, Peter. We're moving into the final phase with the closing remarks. So we'll give each candidate 1 minute for closing remarks, and we are going in alphabetical order. And I've got everything ready with my timer, so 1 minute, please. And Arjun, you are up first, please.
Thank you. I'm deeply committed to advancing the engineering profession in Ontario and firmly advocate for the distinct roles of regulatory responsibility for PEO and the advocacy role for OSPI. During my tenure as the LGA counselor on the PEO Council over the past 5 years, I've successfully championed the separation of these crucial and critical roles. Additionally, as the former chair of the Governance Nomination Committee at PEO, I collaborated with the PEO Council to prioritize its regulatory functions. If elected, I'm confident in my ability to foster cooperation and collaboration between OSPI and PEO. It's imperative that we work diligently to bridge any existing gaps for the betterment of the profession. We need to coexist and thrive. Drawing from my extensive background in financial audit and risk management, I currently serve as the chair of the Audit and Investment Committee at the Electrical Safety Authority. In this role, I provide leadership in overseeing companies' financial performance, budgeting, enterprise risk management, and management substantial pension fund exceeding hundreds of millions of dollars. Previously, I chaired the Finance, Audit, and Risk Committee at Engineers Canada, and currently serve in the Audit and Risk Finance Committee at Pallet Skills Canada. I'm also the chair of the CEO Search Committee to replace our retiring CEO at Engineers Canada. With your support and vote, I aim to bring innovative strategies to grow OSPI's membership and ensure it becomes a robust and resilient engineering advocacy organization. Together, we can shape a brighter future for the engineering community in Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nicholas Bergman, please.
Thank you. Short and sweet. I think a strong advocacy body requires members to increase the strength of its voice. And as a board member, I want to continue to focus on growing membership. That was something that I was very keen on and very focused on in my previous term on the OSPI board. And I'd like to continue doing that and continue working on helping the organization grow membership. The engineering profession is at a pivotal moment with the changes being made by the regulator. This is definitely an opportunity for OSPI to step in and to support Ontario engineers to become licensed and as well to maintain their license. And that's an opportunity for OSPI to provide unique value propositions to those individuals. Thank you. Vote for me.
Thank you. And Nick Colucci, please.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank my fellow candidates who are running for election. It takes a lot of guts to put yourself out there to run for election. So thank you all. I want to thank the staff who made this evening possible and who made the election process very smooth. I also want to thank everyone who joined us today for attending this All Candidates meeting. I would ask you to vote for me so that I may continue to advocate for the profession, to serve as a dedicated board member committed to continuing the great work of OSPI and strengthening the voice of Ontario engineers. And if you have any other questions for me, please feel free to email me at votecolucci@gmail.com or PEOpastpresident@gmail.com. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you. Over to Peter, please.
Thank you very much. OSPI is poised for great success in the coming years. And I really do want to be part of that process and continue to serve the profession as an OSPI board member. But I'll give you a sense of some of the specifics that I've done as a board member. In this last current term, as part of the HR committee, I led the process to redevelop the CEO performance appraisal and feedback process, which previously was causing a great deal of tension between the board and the CEO. and we put in place a new process, which the current one was very ad hoc with no structure to it. So we put in place a new process. Some of my unfinished business on the board is the board does not have a succession plan for the CEO. So there's another project that as a board member, in addition to creating the tone at the top, that I'm looking forward to completing in my last term as an OSPI board. So thank you very much. It's been a really enjoyable evening, and I wish everybody great success. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marilyn Powers, please.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank you first for giving me the opportunity to have that first 3-year term that I'm just completing on the board. It has been an exciting 3 years. And as I said, the board did elect me as the chair for one of those years. And I grew a lot professionally and personally in that. But I'm not done yet. As Peter said, we've done a lot of great things. I now have the Director's Education Program almost behind me, 3/4 of the way through. I've learned a lot. I know that we can provide more strategic foresight thinking. We can have more of those discussions that we're starting to have now to ensure that OSPI serves the interests of the members, you, and is around for a long time to do that. So that's why I would like to come back. Please let me.
Thank you. And Beatrice C., please.
Guys, this is a fantastic panel. You cannot go wrong. None of us can go wrong with this slate of candidates. We will have an experienced board regardless of the outcome of this election. I submit to you that diversity is also important. And when we talk about diversity as one of our key goals and values, diversity is not just, our demographics, although that is extremely important. It is also diversity of professional experience. And regardless of who other 3 you vote for, if you believe that diversity is not only an apparent virtue, but also an effective government strategy, voting for me is a good idea because all of my colleagues I have respected deeply because they have been on either the board of OSPI or PEO Council since before the pandemic, with the exception of Marilyn, who joined just after the pandemic. And so I bring a fresh perspective. I also don't have any knowledge of personal issues, but I do have a wealth of experience in governance, which I would like to offer as a gift, another gift to the engineering community as the newly elected board member. And I promise that my first role will be to listen and ensure that the tone from the top is what we all believe to have been our greatest strength up until this point. If we believe that the board is a ship, it is important to have folks who have in professional and real experience with the emerging disciplines, which I believe I bring, as well as perhaps a younger demographic. In other words, those 0 to 5 year graduates who I have mentored tirelessly, and I always will until I retire and probably after I retire. So thank you for taking your time to watch this video to the end. This is a great slate, but do vote for me and 3 others.
Thank you. And thank you all. This now concludes this evening's discussion, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of our candidates for participating in tonight's event. It has been a great learning experience actually listening to you all. I would also like to thank the members for tuning in and for posing the questions to our candidates. I hope the evening has been informative. This evening's town hall has been recorded and will be posted on our website by tomorrow, end of day. All members in good standing should have received their election package via email on Monday, March 25th. And all voting for the OSPI Board of Elections is done online, and it's really, really easy. So if I hadn't said it, I'll say it again, take the time to vote, please vote. Polls are now open, and they'll remain open until 11:59 p.m. Eastern, Monday, April 15th. All election information can be found on OSPI's website, ospi.on.ca. And thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good luck to all.
This was fun, a
Great
pleasure.
night.